This is the main page of the class website. This is just kind of where everything goes. I haven't quite gotten the formatting right for this page, but that's a little Mario hat right there. The reason I made my website say I'm from the old school is because, frankly, while I am more or less tied to teaching the way that our state standards are set up, I still like to show students the old traditional way of doing math, because I find that that really speaks to a lot of the abstract concepts they've been told throughout elementary school and forces them to put it into practice. At the top of the page is where announcements go. And as you can see, progress reports from all classes were sent home on October 2nd. That's a Tuesday. And they are due back within the week in connection with the homework assignment from that night. Let's see. Another thing, frankly, SchoolNet, which is the resource where we take a lot of our quizzes and tests on, isn't that reliable, and a lot of students and parents have been saying that they can't get to the resource from home. What I've done instead is I've gone ahead and every formal assignment we do, I'm going to upload them just up here in the test corrections section of the website. But anyways, students will still need to find out what answer they chose and what the correct answer was from SchoolNet while at school, either before 9:15 or after 4:15, or during a time that they're allowed to do so in class. Any formal assignments given in September and October, those test corrections are due no later than October 25th. I'm going to have to change that because grammar, bad. Anyways, here are the lists of tutoring and when those days and times are. Also, directions on how to actually access the internet from home using the students' Chromebooks is a bit tricky, so I've uploaded that as a PDF to the website. One note I'm going to make about the website is that I upload everything as a PDF file. What that means is that all of these files are accessible from home even if your Chromebook isn't working. You can access this on another computer, on a phone, a tablet, Chromebook, whatever. As if it has working internet and has an operating system, it can open these files. Down here, I put our current unit and whether or not it is calculator active or not. Unit 2, Factors and Multiples, this is a calculator inactive unit. Students should not be using a calculator except to check their work when they are done in this unit. This unit focuses primarily on students' ability to multiply and divide and to recall their multiplication and division facts quickly. And that's something that students aren't getting enough practice with if they are using a calculator. Down here at the bottom, I have check out the YouTube channel. I actually do maintain a YouTube channel for my students, and the reason I maintain it is because, well, a lot of students really need help, even if they were in class, and also sometimes students are absent and they miss notes, and sometimes parents complain that they haven't been to school in a few years and don't know how to help their students and want to see how they've been taught. So, when you click this button, it takes you straight to Mr. A in Math. And that's the name of the YouTube channel. This is actually where I don't know why I'm even mentioning this in the video, because the only way you could possibly get to this video is if, frankly, you're already on the channel, so I won't waste your time about that. But this is where information goes. Anything uploaded a year ago or more, as of 2018, these videos are all from a year or further back, and I find that these videos are a little bit more streamlined. Plus, easier to edit, so why not? Back to the website. We have an Assignments tab. Under here, I need to update this actually as soon as I am done recording, but this is where I put what a student missed. I put the date. Anything that needed to be turned in, that's something I've only started recently with these, so please forgive me. I typed up anything that we did during class, and I uploaded any assignments that were handed out or anything like that. So on this day, on the 25th, we had done a core bytes test, and then we had done a surface area worksheet. That worksheet is uploaded as a PDF file, which can be downloaded and viewed from just about anywhere. Moving on, the test corrections tab. This is where students can go where if they say, okay, we just took geometry exam, and that was on the 28th of September. It was calculator active, 20 questions, and I put a little reminder here. The corrections instructions are back over here, but inside of this file is a regular PDF file of the test that was given. It does not have the questions that students missed marked, nor does it have the correct answers typed up on it. Students will still have to access SchoolNet at school or some other time just to double check to see which questions they need to be copying, but I've already said that. Core bytes. Moving on to the core bytes section. The core bytes are essentially our daily warm-up. I upload them in sets as the year goes on, and over time we will have core bytes tests. The first core bytes test will be on this file, and I'll show you a little example of that. Here is an example of a core byte sheet. Students get one of these sheets every 4 days or so. This is what the sheets normally look like. Normally, there are 4 sections. Each one is a warm-up for a different day. At the very end of a section, every 15 core bytes or so, just about every 3 weeks, students will receive a sheet of paper that looks like this. Whenever one of these comes home and it has a blank spot in the bottom right-hand corner, that is a message to students that they will have a core bytes test at the conclusion of the core bytes on the bottom left. This is essentially serving as a 3-day notice for every core bytes test or warm-up test that I choose to give. And the reason I use these core bytes, they don't serve as regular warm-ups. I'm going to go ahead and try to zoom in to one of these. In core bytes number 14, if you look very closely at these numbers off to the left, they say 6 RP over 3, 6 NS over 7, 6 EE over 5. What those are is those are informing me and the students and parents that this number corresponds directly to one of the Common Core standards. Now, while our state doesn't follow Common Core exactly anymore, most of the standards still line up to where they were before. So, just as an example, core bytes number 14, can't speak tonight, says what value of x makes the equation true, x plus 5 equals 12, and the answer is going to be 7. X is supposed to equal 7 for this one. That is from our expressions and equations unit, section 5, which, frankly, we won't be getting to this unit for another month or so. The reason I like the core bytes so much is it more or less adds a little bit of more of a warm-up than most people tend to think of warm-ups. A lot of people think of warm-ups as being something that the teacher puts on the board that the students already have done, already know how to do. But I like to get students out of their comfort zone and thinking about what might come next. I want students to look at this question and attempt it just because it makes them start thinking about, okay, this is something we're going to go over. I wonder if I can figure it out now. And more often than not, the students can figure a lot of this stuff out by themselves. Because this question, number 2, compares these as temperatures, most students are totally comfortable saying that -5 degrees Celsius is probably higher than -8, even though we haven't covered integers yet. Most students are comfortable with identifying this blank spot of the ratio table to be 5, or 15, even though we haven't covered ratios yet. We haven't covered volume yet, and yet a lot of students have already realized that it can't be at the outside space of a 3D figure because that's surface area, something we have covered. So I just really like using these. And a bonus about the core bytes tests is that, frankly, the core bytes tests are no different than the warm-ups. Each question is pulled from a different unit, and all of the questions are copied and pasted directly from the warm-ups. If students pay attention in class, they won't have any trouble solving problems like question number 10, because they have already seen this question before. Matter of fact, number 10 on the last core bytes test we had already taken was directly from the core bytes we had done 2 days ago. So it's something that no student really has a good excuse for doing poorly on a core bytes test, seeing as they will have seen all of these answers at one point or another. In the event that a student is absent and I don't upload these core bytes onto the assignments tab, they can always come to the core bytes tab and pull these. Also, if a student loses a sheet, I do not give them a replacement one. Instead, the students are told to follow along in class and record the answers, so that way from home they will be able to access these files and review using those answers they have written down. The next tab has the syllabus for this year and just a little bit of background information about us. By us, I mean my wife and I. Down here is a little explanation why I teach. A lot of students, by the time they get to 6th grade, feel an awful lot like this. They might be looking at the board, looking at something that seems impossibly difficult, and they feel like it's way overcomplicated. I like to try to break things down so students understand them a little bit better than they did before. My favorite description of math is that math is just a game. And like any game, you gotta learn the rules before you can really play or get good at the game. And that's something that I like telling students, and a lot of times, students find out that that really is all there is to it. Once you learn the rules for algebra, it's easy. Once you learn the rules for playing baseball, it's not so hard to follow. And once you learn the rules of how certain functions in math work, everything becomes that much more clear. Now, before I start answering questions that students have, I'm going to go over our syllabus really quick. So first, I'll talk about our standards. Basically, we go through the North Carolina standards, and I'm not going to go through all of this because, quite frankly, it's just a wall of text. It's boring, and if you're interested, feel free to check this out and just see what we'll be going over. Course materials. Essentially, I don't care what students have as long as they have one of these 2 sections covered. If you prefer binders, 1.5 to 2 inch binder works. 5 dividers with folders may be useful. You will still need 2 dedicated folders, not a folder divider combo. Those things don't hold a lot of handouts, and every now and then there will be things passed out that are not hole punched. Students will need at least, this is probably not enough to be honest, but at least 100 sheets of lined paper each quarter. And then everything will be the same from here. Let me move on to the next one. If students don't have a binder, they need 4 notebooks with that 100 plus pages, 1 for each quarter. They don't need to bring all 4 every day. That's insane. Students will also need 5 separate folders if they go with the notebook part. A sectioned expanding folder, like an accordion folder, is acceptable, but students will still need to have 5 separate sections, the same as if they had had a binder. From there, standard mechanical pencils are totally fine. Erasable pens are optional, but make sure that there is a backup because, frankly, they're not the most reliable pens in the world. I've had a whole bunch of them just break on me, so don't rely on them only. Students will definitely need 1 pack of graph paper. 100 pages should be plenty for the entire school year. Students will need headphones or earbuds. This is in bold and italic because students need them. There will be activities they will have to do on the Chromebooks, and that they will have to have the sound on, and it just gets way too noisy and way too chaotic with 30 students in a room with none of them having headphones. There is a preferred calculator. Pretty much any calculator that can do math is fine, but the TI-30XS Multiview is preferred. I put in a link to Google in there, or a link to Amazon in there, in case you want to see the exact one. You don't have to buy it from Amazon or anything. It doesn't fund the school or whatever, but that's where you can go to check out what it is. Curriculum calendar, you can just look back at the previous page to see the pacing. There's going to be tests for every assignment. There's a midterm test, regular coordinate pictures. This is something we are getting started in tutorial right now, but you can't expect to see any projects coming home except for maybe towards the end of the month. Quizzes are given frequently if you ask the students and they are honest, or at the very least pay attention. I have given a quiz every single week, and I intend to continue that practice. I quiz students every single Friday on the material we covered that week, unless there is another test or unit exam that we need to do instead. There will be a Core Bytes warm-up test every 16 days. As described earlier, Core Bytes have 15 Core Bytes. Naturally, the 16th day will be that test. Daily assignments, there's a warm-up every single day except for special occasions. We will take notes regularly. Typically, it is once or twice a week, sometimes more. Let's see, studying the warm-ups, you need to study them. All the questions and answers are given during the warm-ups. There is no excuse for failures on the Core Bytes tests. Taking good notes, students go over notes that we discuss in class. I then upload the notes to YouTube. I upload them to my website. Honor students, I'll talk more about what I do for honor students when I get to the question part of this video. Homework. I give homework basically every day, but I have a love-hate relationship with homework. In a perfect world, I would simply look at my students at the end of every class and say, class is over, please go home and practice what you learned. This is not a perfect world. If I said that, about 90% of my students would go home and watch SpongeBob and just not do their work. So I tend to assign homework about 10-15 minutes before the end of class. The reason I give out the homework early is so that way students can start to ask questions and start working on it before they leave for the day. The reason I do that is because I don't agree with the phrase practice makes perfect. That's wrong. If you go home and practice that 2 + 2 = 5 every day, yeah, you're practicing it, but you're getting it wrong and you're not getting any better. You can only get better with practice if you're practicing it correctly. So, I tell students that perfect practice makes perfect. Students go over some of the homework in class with me there so they can ask any questions they need. That way, when they go home, they have already gotten some of their homework done, in some cases all of their homework done, and all they have to do is bring it back the next day. And that's the part where students get in trouble. We go over the homework the very next day. The homework is always due the next day. Once the answers are given, I can't, in good conscience, give any student full credit for that assignment, unless they were absent that day. The penalty for late assignments will be applied at this point at the teacher's discretion. For me, I just give a flat 50. That's what I do. I believe it is in our policy as a district that the maximum credit that I can give is a 50. If it's inaccurate, I'm still sticking to it. Students get 50% of the credit because they will have heard all of the answers and they are no longer going to be able to give me 100%. Makeup work. First of all assignments are uploaded, except in cases like this past week, where I have 2 computers die as part of a hard drive failure and processor failure. But I digress. Makeup work. Whenever students return to class, they are responsible for getting their makeup work and returning it within 5 days of coming back to school. Naturally, that is 5 school days, which means any student who is absent automatically ends up getting 2 additional days from Saturday and Sunday, whether or not they realize it. After those 5 school days, if the student was absent Wednesday and they come back Thursday, whatever they had missed from that Wednesday is due back that next Thursday. And if it comes around that they turn it in on that Friday, that is 6 school days late. It's subject to that late grade punishment that I told you about. Grading policy, informal assignments, includes all of this stuff except class participation. I don't really do that as a grade, but that's 35%. And formal assignments, tests, quizzes, projects, that's 65% of students' grade. Our school goes on the 10-point grading system. You can see that here. Grading policy, everything has to be completed on time. You get full credit. Late work, no more than a grade of 60. Oh, there it is, 60. Well, still giving 50. Missing or incomplete work, 0. If the student is incomplete, I can give as low of grade as a 0. Or if the grade is just straight up missing, I can't really do anything about that. Please do not email why a grade is marked 0. The answer is simply I have not gotten the assignment from that student. I mark every paper that is turned in to me, and if you see that paper that a student claims has been turned in and it does not have a mark on it from me, it means it was not turned in to me and I have not seen it. Policies, attendance, come to school. Promptness, students have 5 minutes to get to class every day. For first block, there is even a 2-minute warning bell that rings for students. Students are expected to use that 5 minutes to get to class, use the restroom, stop by their lockers, and anything else they need to prepare. This is middle school, not elementary school. We do not have time to teach students how to sit in class. There is no tolerance for constant classroom interruptions. Food and drink. There is no food allowed in the classroom. There is also no soda allowed in the classroom. I do allow water bottles, and in fact, if students want to bring Gatorade, Powerade, or anything that is in a closed container, something with a lid, that if it were knocked off of a table from about 2.5 feet high, that it won't spill. So a McDonald's cup with the lid is not a sealed container. It will be thrown away at the start of class. Dress code and electronic usage, that was both addressed in the student handbook, and students signed and returned a dress code policy sheet before the first week of school was over. In addition, cell phones, they are to be turned in to their 4th block teachers. They can also be turned off and put in students' lockers. However, there is no policy for CMS that lets us use cell phones. I also do not recommend or allow the use of calculators on cell phones. Let me see here. Chromebooks, students will receive their login information. That's already been taken care of. If a student claims they don't know how to log into something, they are lying. I don't call out my students for lying much, but it is a bald-faced lie if a student comes home and says they don't know how to check their grades, or if they don't know how to get to SchoolNet, or if they don't know how to get to any other electronic resource, because we do that on a daily basis at school. Classroom needs, in general, we will always need Kleenex because snot happens, hand sanitizer, paper towels,
lined notebook paper, disinfecting wipes, copy paper, all that stuff. Policies, rules of the classroom as seen here. Procedures, start the warm-up, turn in the homework. We go over everything in about 10 minutes of class starting. Consequences. The first time, and at least for me, because I am forgetful, probably the first 4 times a student does something, I will warn them. After that, I have a behavior track that I move students' names around on. If they are off track, I will move their name off track as a final warning before moving their seat, giving them modified SPA, which is where they sit at a separate table. Students will sit at a separate table and they will write about what they have done, and the note will be sent home for you to review and sign. After that, students may be removed from class, and after that, if all of this has not deterred students' behavior, they may be referred to administration. Here is the contact information for our person that I am having trouble thinking of their title. The 6th grade counselor. It has been a long day. You can contact her to schedule meetings, and that is essentially it for the syllabus. Last but not least are some questions that some parents had at curriculum night that I'd like to answer now. First of all, what is homeroom? Honestly, it doesn't exist. We go to homeroom for the first 5 days of school, just so that way students have a place where they can go and get familiar, and we can go over school-wide rules, but otherwise they won't see me again except for really the, I don't know, maybe the last day of school or so. It's really not a class, it's not a place that students go. Next up, how long is class? Class is about 70 minutes, taking into consideration that we do occasionally stretch those out if there is something that is necessary. Tutorial during school is about 50 minutes, and that is really it. Second block is extended. It is an hour and a half. And third block is extended, but only in the sense that it is extended for the purpose of the extra transition to and from lunch. The purpose of tutorial, what is it, what does it do, why do we have it? We have it as part of our district's policy, and the way it typically works is we use it as a time for some students to self-pace themselves on an online resource and to improve and further enrich their knowledge. It is also a time when I can pull individual students if I am aware that they are currently struggling in any capacity in class. And is it a case for students who have difficulty doing test corrections on their own or working on projects to get a little bit of extra help while I am there and while I am able to answer questions for them. It is not simply an extension of class. Is there a sign-up sheet for after-school tutoring? Good question. There's not a sign-up sheet. Instead, what I do at the beginning of tutoring at 4:15, I have any student who is planning to stay for me either use their own phone or go to the office and use the school's phone to call you and confirm that you are going to be picking them up from tutoring at 5:15 or 5:10. I do this simply because life happens, things get chaotic, and sometimes parents say, yes, stay for tutoring, not realizing that they themselves are going to be held up at a meeting after work and won't be able to get here in time. So things happen, I understand, but I will be having your student call you right before tutoring starts at 4:15 if they plan on staying. How do tardies work? It's really difficult to mark students tardy sometimes, because sometimes it is something that is difficult to avoid, but it really shouldn't be. At the start of the day, students have between 8:45 and 9:15 with a 2-minute warning bell that happens at 9:13, telling students that they need to get to class immediately. For first block tardies, If you are dropped off, you will have to contact the front office and ask them to mark it as excused. I'm not allowed to mark it excused unless I have a note from the office. For late buses, they are given a late bus pass when they step off the bus. Those are marked excused and I don't believe count against students. For students who are here, they didn't have a late bus and were dropped off plenty early enough and are simply late because they were hanging around in the hall, they are marked tardy. No excuse is really good enough, especially with the 2-minute warnings and the myriad of different passes we have. Between classes, students are given 5 minutes to transition. They have between 12:20 and 12:25 to get to third block. I'll have students who will show up at 12:30 and wonder why they were marked tardy, even though we have already started going over the warm-up. In addition, students have about 5 minutes to transition for tutorial, and this would be a good part for me to mention. If you're late to tutorial, you can still be marked tardy for that class or absent for that class if you are caught skipping. And then, of course, students have an additional 5 minutes after tutorial to their fourth block class. Where is everything in your classroom? Fair enough question. This is a video I'm filming from home, so obviously you can't see it. But typically students' desks are arranged all facing the front of the room, with the exception of 2 in the front and 2 in the back facing inward. The reason I have 2 desks set up that way is simply so that way I can fit more students in the front row. At the very front of the room is my desk. The board, which is an electronic board, it's almost like a smart board, only not as nice. And then just off to the side of my board is a calendar with any announcements, any upcoming tests or quizzes, projects, due dates, whatever. The assignments board, where I write up what a student's assignment is for that given day and any special announcements. Besides that is the front door for the classroom with a bookshelf. That bookshelf has a stacker with missing assignments from previous days for the previous 5 days of school. It has a stack of test correction forms that students are welcome to take if they need to do corrections for any test or assignment. And towards the side of the room, I would say it's to the right of students who are in their seats facing forward, is a little board with students' names on it, and those names can be moved around and adjusted according to their behavior. And near the back of the room, I have a supply closet that locks using my room key, and I use that to secure students' phones who drop them off who have me for fourth block. Phones are locked away and secured. Students can still get to them if they have an emergency and need to get to their phone. They can come and ask me, and I generally, unless it's a silly reason like they want to call in a radio station, I will let them. When can my student go to the bathroom? So that first half hour of the day, that's a really good time for students to use the restroom. The 5-minute transition from first block to second block is a good time. I should also point out that when we go outside for outdoor time called spa, students are welcome to use the bathroom once we get outside. I tend to stand right by the gym, and I'll open the gym door and allow students to go inside and use the restroom if they need to. So that's another 20-minute time they can go to the bathroom. Between second block and third block, they've got 5 minutes. They can use the restroom then. On their way to the cafeteria, we walk right past the bathroom. Students are welcome to go to the restroom then, assuming they have asked permission. Coming back from lunch, students are discouraged from using the restroom. That is not a time that students can be going to the restroom, as we are trying to clear the hallways quickly because we have a different lunchtime than the rest of the school and need to move quickly so we don't disturb other classes. However, class ends immediately after students return from lunch for that 5-minute transition, and students can use the restroom then. With all those times for students to use the bathroom, they can if they absolutely need to use the restroom during class, but they need to get permission, and they have a list in their agenda that tells them how many times more they are allowed to use the restroom unless they have explicit permission from parents or a note from a doctor or other things like that. How are honor students given curriculum enrichment? So the way I like to describe this actually goes to a movie that I enjoy watching. It is called Stand and Deliver. It's a movie about a math teacher who originally is hired to teach computers and gets hired in an inner city school. And there's a powerful scene in it to me where the teacher has his students repeat after him a negative times a negative equals a positive. And after repeating that after him a dozen or so times, he pauses and looks at his students and asks, why? And that's really what I like to describe about honors. In my other classes, I will go over, here is the formula, here is how it's used, here is why it exists. Let's go ahead and practice it. For honors, I'll show them the formula. But I'll also show them other methods that involve going around the formula and demonstrate for them, here's a way that you can do this problem without the formula. Here's the science behind it. Here's the reason that this formula was created. And in some cases, particularly in ratios and number systems, while standards class covers our units, honors will cover our units and be exposed to some 7th grade curriculum in the process. How much time is there for lunch? So that question actually fluctuates. Towards the beginning of the school year, we did not have a very good setup as far as lunch goes. Lunch was technically from 1:28 until 1:45 or until 1:48. However, what actually wound up happening was if students bought their lunch, they would go through the line and maybe not get their food until 1:35, and they were being told to exit the cafeteria at close to 1:45 or around then. Since then, we have adjusted the lunch schedule, and now we are going to lunch from 1:45 until about 2:05. We haven't been following the schedule for very long, but as far as I can tell, this new schedule has been working far better, and students have been managing to get through the lines a lot quicker, because the other benefit of this new lunch schedule is that it is only 6th grade in the cafeteria during that time. So they're not having to compete for a spot in the lunch line with 7th grade or 8th grade like they were before. And those were really kind of all the questions that parents had brought up as far as I had remembered to type them up. And also means that that is the end of my presentation, really. You can check out everything on the website if you want. You can watch some more YouTube videos of me teaching students math and how that works. But otherwise, I'm going to end the video. Have a nice night.